Hey there. Welcome and thank you for coming to watch this video or listen to it. I'm so pleased that you're here with me. I want to speak on a very important topic today. And it's one that doesn't get spoken about very often. And it's one that also can help people by giving them realizations about their own life and their own selves. So I'm Luna Anna, and I'm the channel of Healing the Patriarchy with Love, which is a new way of seeing patriarchy that inspires the fast track healing of it for the well-being of all. I'm also a quantum hypnotherapist and soul healer that offers healing services for women online. And that's for women who want to transform their own lives in service to a world in need of transformation. As always, it's my honor to serve the planet, the healing and awakening of the planet, through the empowerment, enlightenment, and equity of women. Today, I want to talk about trauma responses. And I think most people know about them or have heard of them these days. But I'll just give a very basic overview of them in case you haven't. So a trauma response is a behavior that is brought about by our brain wanting to protect us from a threat, an actual threat, or a perceived threat. And these behaviors vary, but they get given a title. So there's fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and flop. So they're easy to remember, all the Fs. And I want to speak about how the world, everybody in the world currently, is in a trauma response to patriarchy. What that means. So you may recognize some of these behaviors in yourself or others. So let's start with fight. So fight is I'm going to fight the patriarchy. I'm going to argue with reality. And it can also be things like overworking, over exercising, overdoing anything is a fight response. It's a fight trauma response. And it's a response that comes about when a person wants to be in control. And so they want to fight what's there in front of them to change it. And of course, fight trauma response is very valid and very helpful if you're actually under attack. Not helpful if you're just going about your everyday business and living in the world. And yet you can see it a lot in the world. The idea that you need to fight for things, that you need to fight to change things. That is all the fight trauma response. And as I say, this can even be things like, I must fight to be fit and healthy, so I must exercise all the time. And even that can be a fight trauma response. And anything that is a trauma response is an inflamed response. And anything that is an inflamed response is a dysregulated nervous system, and a dysregulated nervous system is a wounded inner child, and the shadow of the wounded inner child is actually the ego. And that's not to blame the inner child at all. We never blame the inner child. The inner child is pure innocence. And just speaking of how these things play out. So speaking of the human and speaking of the spiritual, both very important. And then we have the flight trauma response. And flight trauma response in response to patriarchy looks like, well, I'm not patriarchal. There's no patriarchy in my world. There's no patriarchy in my life. It doesn't exist. Because that is fleeing from the truth of it and fleeing from the reality of it. Hiding in fantasy and illusion. It's the equivalent of fleeing, running from it. And I'm sure you will know, either yourself or another, who has had that behavior, that trauma response, or maybe still has it. I know I've been there. I've been in that one. I've been in all of them. Hence why I can come and do the video. And then there's Fawn, trauma response. And this actually tends to happen quite a lot. This is a very popular one when it comes to patriarchy, the Fawn trauma response, which is the, well, if I'm just really nice, I won't get hurt. That's what the Fawn trauma response is. And it looks like things like, well, not all men. Victim blaming, that comes from the Fawn trauma response, trying to fawn over the perpetrator so they don't come and get you. That's the Fawn trauma response. Fawn trauma response. All the men I know are lovely. They wouldn't do anything bad. And that might be true, but it doesn't mean that we live in a world where there isn't the problem of, male violence, whether that be against women or girls or men or boys. It's rife. And recently here in the UK, we had riots about, protecting our children from Muslim men. And what the people who were enacting those riots didn't realise is that all stats highlight that the only common denominator of a threat to women and girls in terms of violence is men. It's all men from all different backgrounds, all different races, all different religions, all different colours, different ages. I mean, to the point that researchers actually just can't figure it out other than it's misogyny, the hatred of women. And I actually think the misogyny is wider than that. I think it's the hatred of everything feminine. So it's the fear of emotion. It's the fear of the heart. It's the fear of the inner child, which is the creation of the divine feminine, of course. It's the fear of all the feminine essences in the world, the yin, and the hate, therefore the hatred of it. And again, that itself is a fight or flight response. I'm scared, so I'm going to fight it. I'm going to hurt it. Then you've got the freeze trauma response. And this can play out as a combination of the fawn. And it plays out quite a lot in marriages. So women who are in unequal marriages, where they're doing the majority of the work, whether that be the emotional, the spiritual, the practical, the caring, the nurturing, the organizing. You know, households, taking care of a household is like a full-time job. And many women are expected to do that alongside child rearing, work, and lots of other things, with only a little, if any, help. And they stay frozen in those marriages because they're too frightened to ask for it to change in case it doesn't, because then they have to leave. And that's frightening. It is frightening to leave a marriage. It's very frightening. It takes a lot of bravery to leave something that has been enmeshed in your life, a melding together of two lives into one, to leave that behind. And we also see it, you know, when patriarchy is there right in front of you. Maybe somebody's making a rape joke. Maybe somebody, you get a sense that they're abusing women. Maybe you even get a sense they're raping women. Maybe you see some patriarchy actually happening in front of you, but you don't challenge it. Maybe you even go into the trauma response of Fawn and join in like it's a laugh and it's all okay. Again, been there, done that. Got the t-shirt. Don't like it very much. Doesn't fit me anymore. And so everything I'm saying here, I'm saying with love, because I can say it from a place of non-judgment because I've healed it in myself. And that doesn't mean that I don't go into any of the trauma responses ever. Of course I do. I'm a human. It just means that I have the awareness of them. And because I have the awareness of them, I can check in with myself and not respond in that way. Choose a different way to respond. Or if it's something where it's so severe I just can't help it, then I can take myself off and have some self-care and some time to myself so that my trauma response doesn't play out in the world. And then we've got flop, trauma response. And this is something that often happens with victims of rape. I myself have been, for 30 years, was a victim of rape. Lots of different men in different circumstances. And flop is similar to freeze, but it's a bit like, you know, if you were about to be killed by a bear and they tell you to lie down and just play dead. It's like that. And many people are in flop because they're just so traumatized and drained, you know, sick even, maybe even sick and unwell, and so dysregulated in their nervous system by everything that's happening around us that it's all linked into patriarchy. Everything we see at the moment is the healing of patriarchy. So we flop because we just can't get going. We can't deal with it. Sometimes these trauma responses serve. So, you know, I was talking about how if you're being attacked, then the fight trauma response, of course, serves. And flop can serve, you know, if you really are very dysregulated or getting unwell with it all. And sometimes, you know, we need to be in a flop state because that's a very yin state, and very deep healing can take place in that space. So it's not that these are necessarily wrong, it's just that it's really helpful to have some awareness around them and to consider whether you're in any of those trauma responses yourself. Because whether you believe in patriarchy or not, it is here. And it is damaging the planet. And what I want to say as well is that patriarchy isn't men. Now, men often are privileged because of it, and men often do quite well out of it. But it's really just an out of balance masculine energy. So it's basically when an energy becomes out of balance, it becomes its shadow frequency. So what we're seeing in the world with patriarchy is an out of balance masculine energy. And this has just come from people being disconnected from their hearts, which is the feminine within all of us, including men. But men are being murdered by men. Men are being raped by men. Men are being attacked by men. And it's really just a feedback system and a messenger to all of us that the masculine energy in the world is out of balance and needs healing. And the way that we balance it and heal it is everybody needs to take care of their hearts. They need to start that journey if they haven't already. I know many of you watching this will have done already. And I want to say well done, because it takes real bravery to do so. And everybody can cultivate the bravery to get there, and everybody is in the process of cultivating the bravery to get there, and we will all get there in the end. Heart is the feminine. And we shunned the heart in favor of having most of our awareness focused on our mind, which is the masculine. And then this spurred on, a world that's very logical. Everything's about the tangible. Everything's about gain, because obviously masculine energy is very focused on goals and achievements. And when it's just focused on those, that's healthy. It's when it becomes out of balance that it turns into greed, for example, which is absolutely rife on this planet at this time. Got people hoarding wealth, more wealth than they could ever spend, ever. And they're doing it for power. And it doesn't even give you power. And the real funny thing is, the place where your power is in your heart. Love holds the most power because it's got the most light. And they're shunning that in favor of hoarding wealth. And it's just an out of balance masculine energy that needs healing. That's all it is. When we have to live in a world with all these things, whether it be people hoarding wealth or anything that's unfair, unjust, and let's be honest, there's some absolute atrocities happening that are just, I sort of want to say unforgivable, to be honest. How do we live in a world with ethnic cleansing taking place, wars, trafficking, all the other problems that we see, like cost of living and things like that? They just put so much pressure on us as humans. And that's why we're in all these trauma responses. But if we heal the patriarchy with love, which means getting to know our hearts, means talking to your heart and waiting patiently, which might take months or years even, for a response, and to start a relationship with our hearts. Quota, the feminine energy that comes from that, starts to tip the scales and changes the balance into a world free of patriarchy, which I think we're all ready for. And certainly if you're watching this video and you got this far, you're definitely ready for it. Maybe you're already doing it. Thank you if you are. And so we can see how these trauma responses play out in our lives, and we can see why. It's totally reasonable to have them. Very natural, very human. So I'm not saying don't have them. Because how could you not have them when the world is how it is? I'm just doing this to raise awareness of them, help in your response to them. Because when you're in a trauma response, if there isn't a true immediate threat, then it's really self-care that is called for. And again, this actually means going to our hearts and meeting our hearts. And that's all it is. It's as simple as that. Well, maybe I'm making it sound easy, but you know, it might not seem easy, but it is once you start the journey. And it gets easier and easier. And the more of us that do it, the more of the uprising of the true divine feminine, which is really, you know, all the prophecies of the rising of the divine feminine are really just speaking of us befriending our heart, which is the feminine in all of us. And then that helps the world to heal from patriarchy, and it makes it easier and easier because we're all connected by our hearts, because love is the thing that unites and connects all of us, and love lives in the heart. It's also the portal to the soul, and the soul, of course, is the bridge between you and the source of all, the universe. And it's actually the bridge to the quantum field as well. So if we're all loving and healing our hearts, imagine how much love gets filled into the flows into the quantum field. How much self-love. And then it gets easier and easier and easier for people who aren't finding it easy, that can't find the way, that don't know how to do this, that will never come and watch a video like this. Because, you know, the people that really need to see it probably aren't watching it. Although I'm holding out that, you know, maybe they will. Totally open to that. Come on, you're welcome. It's time. And that's how we heal the patriarchy with love. And if that interests you, I've got a whole playlist of videos entitled Healing the Patriarchy with Love. All different videos about, you know, what it is, what I mean by it, how to do it. And if you want to go a bit deeper and go a bit further, I do offer online healing services for women. I'm a quantum hypnotherapist and soul healer. So there's nothing we can't tackle together. So if you're wanting to transform your life in service to a world in need of transformation, go and have a look at my website, lunalouiseanna.com, or send me an email, lunalouiseanna@gmail.com, and we can go from there. I want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being the person that came to this video and watched it, and thank you for getting this far. I really do appreciate any subscribers or any likes, any comments, things like that. You know how these algorithms work. Well, I don't know how they work because I don't understand them, but I believe that's how they work. So please help me to reach more people, and even consider, you know, sharing the video. I'm very open to that. I do need to get the message out there, and it's getting quite hard to do so. I don't know how to do that kind of thing. Too busy channeling the light. It's quite hard to do the grounded stuff like sharing videos and, you know, getting followers and all that kind of thing. So anything you can do to help with that, I truly appreciate and I'm grateful for. And I just want to say thank you so much for your interest in the topic today, for your interest in healing the patriarchy with love, and for watching the video. So thank you all. Take care now. Bye. On the masculine side of all of us, including women, which essentially is the mind.